AM 1260 KLYC. It has been an historic weather day in the state of Oregon, Portland metro area, the Gorge, and here in the Willamette Valley. We have on the phone line with us right now Steve Pierce, the owner of Northwest Weather Consultants. Steve, been an eventful day, hasn't it?
Yes, definitely an eventful day, and for that matter, an eventful February. A rare Arctic blast came across the entire Pacific Northwest earlier this week. Then we threw in the near-perfect recipe for Western Valley lowland snowfall. We had the cold air in place, very dry, cold Arctic air, temperatures in the upper teens and lower 20s on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Then we threw a whole bunch of moisture over the top of that cold air in off the Pacific Ocean, and that is the classic recipe for quite a bit of snow in February. And what makes this a historic February event, so to speak, is a couple of reasons. Number one, this is the second Arctic blast we've had this winter. Normally, we may go 3 or 4 winters without seeing even one. So to get 2 in the same year, you have to go back to the winter of 1989-90, nearly 25 years to have that happen twice in the same winter. And then in February, to get a February Arctic blast, this is quite rare. Last one we had was back just before the Great Flood in February of 96. We had an Arctic blast with about 8 inches of snow, followed by a Pineapple Express and about 7 inches of rain, and that's what pushed us into the flood of February 96. But the real interesting part, I can't remember. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can't remember the last time we had a blizzard warning in the Columbia River Gorge in the month of February. And further, temperatures. Portland International Airport staying in the low 20s, 23 for a high on Thursday at the Portland International Airport. That is the coldest daytime high temperature ever recorded at the Portland International Airport, and those records go all the way back to 1940 there. Now, that's the coldest record high temperature for this late in the season. I do want to make that clarification. This late in the winter season at the Portland Airport, we've never had a colder daytime high temperature. And if we look at actually back all the way to the 1870s at downtown Portland records, you have to go back to 1933. It was February 9th of 1933 to find a daytime high temperature this cold, this late in the season. That's 81 years ago. So this has been a historic storm in several aspects.
So the next question people are looking for tomorrow, and I guess there's more snow on the way.
Yeah, there's a second system that's going to track across Oregon, similar to how this one did. Now, the difference will be, one, the cold air is still going to be in place in the western half of the valley, so there's not going to be any problem with enough cold air. In other words, it's cold enough to support more snow again tomorrow on Friday. But this storm's going to take a little bit more of a southern track. So Portland, Vancouver, northern areas of the Willamette Valley will be right on the edge of the snow this time, where areas from Salem south down to Medford, that will be the main targeted area of snowfall for the Friday afternoon system. So now, can models be off 50 miles one direction or the other, and we see snow all the way up into southwest Washington like we did today, or a little bit further south, and then Portland, Vancouver escape it tomorrow? It's always possible, but at this point, somewhere in the valley, they're going to get a double whammy again tomorrow, and this system will be quite juicy as well. So we're expecting another 3 to possibly even 6 inches somewhere between Vancouver, Washington, and Eugene on the west side of the Cascades tomorrow. It's really finicky. These models take a really hard look at where exactly the storm is going to track. It will likely track similar to today's storm, with perhaps just a little bit of a jog south from what took place on Thursday in the northern half of the valley. So
now, Steve,
go ahead.
When I look at the weather forecast, I'm also looking at gradually warming temperatures and more precipitation into next week. So are we possibly, I don't want to talk about flood yet, but we have extremely cold weather here, a lot of snow on the ground. That's going to melt as we get into next week, and we're going to have more precipitation.
There's 2 things that are different from this setup versus a classic Pineapple Express or flood scenario that one might think of or first come to top of mind. say, for instance, back in February '96, we had the snowpack down here on the valley floor, but it was a much heavier snow concentration, or much heavier water concentration in the snow. This is a very, very, very dry snow that's on the valley floor right now, and likely to be again on Friday and Saturday. And it will be a much slower transition out of this, where in February 1996, we had 8 inches of very wet, heavy snow on the valley floor. We had a large snowpack in the Cascades, and that's the critical part. There is not a large snowpack in the Cascades right now, and that which is up there doesn't hold much moisture in it. Not a whole lot of water content in that snow up there. So, and back in February '96, we went from 25 degrees to nearly 60 in a matter of 72 hours, and then we put 7.5 inches of rainfall over top of that. That there's nothing like that coming in the next week. So, a slow moderation over the weekend, followed by more warmer precipitation off the coast, the Pacific coast, into next week. So not going to be any flooding potential, at least not on the major rivers. Some of the smaller streams that rise and fall more rapidly, they may experience a little bit of that early next week. But at this point, I don't see any major flood threat coming up.
What about wind?
Wind on the coast, some of these storms are going to wind up pretty good off the coast early next week. Don't see any major wind threat inland other than under the Arctic air that we're under right now, anywhere near the Portland, Vancouver area and points east into the gorge. Still going to have that bitter cold east wind blowing through Saturday before it finally relents Saturday night and we begin to moderate. Most places will moderate on Saturday in the Willamette Valley. Areas closer to Portland and Vancouver and the gorge probably not going to moderate completely out of this, or at least above freezing, until Saturday night. So we're in it for another 48 hours as of this point, Thursday evening, and round 2 coming in tomorrow afternoon, and then hopefully we'll be moving on to better times, as you could say, warmer weather at least, early next week.
So it doesn't look like there's any major issues. We just have to kind of weather this storm and weather the cold and the additional snow, and then get through this into next week, and it's going to go away.
That is correct. This will be all but a memory early next week, and we'll be under a much wetter and warmer Pacific pattern rather than a Pacific Ocean, more maritime pattern than we are under this continental air mass that came out of Canada and sort of slid in the back door through the gorge over the last few days. But computer models picked up on this a week ago, and they were fairly consistent in this. And they did a really good job. So, and my hat's off to the National Weather Service in Portland for getting advisories out a good solid 24 hours ahead of time. Amounts of snow in the greater Portland, Vancouver area, a little higher than perhaps what was forecast. And that's where the models, it's not an exact science. These computer models are pretty darn good, but they're not 100% accurate in terms of snowfall depth. It's still it's an art more than a science. And models are getting better at predicting it. Like with tomorrow's system that slides by through Oregon, it's going to bring a lot of snow to somebody. Someone's going to get 6 to 8 inches on the west side of the Cascades tomorrow. It's just a question of Vancouver, Washington, or down south closer to Eugene. At this point, it looks like it's going to be a little south of the Portland metro area for the main snow band, the heaviest snow associated with the Friday system. So all eyes to the sky, hunker down, and if you don't have to work on Friday, a lot of schools are closed. Make it a 3-day weekend.
Is it possible maybe in the McMinnville area, this Yamhill County area might get a big blast of snow tomorrow?
Yeah, and it's very possible. Obviously, Yamhill County and the valley out there is a little bit south of the Portland area when you look at it on a map. So, and you're closer to the coast, so we've got that next system that's going to spread moisture up over the entire western Oregon, including northwest Oregon for that matter. Any time from about 2 p.m. on tomorrow afternoon is when the target time would be. Temperatures will still be below freezing Friday afternoon at most locations, especially those that have snow on the ground right now. The exact track of the storm is critical as to who gets what. If you go too far south, you'll be under a southerly wind aloft, and you're likely to see rain mixed with snow down the southern valley, and especially along the central and southern coast. I think they're probably out of it snow-wise. However, northwest interior, again, the Yamhill Valley and the northern half of the Willamette Valley, under the influence of the Columbia River Gorge, likely to see anything that falls will be likely snow. It should finally taper off on Saturday morning from that second system. Then we begin the slow moderation Saturday night into Sunday, and hopefully we'll be out of it by Sunday night with hopefully a normal commute to work on Monday morning across the Portland metro area.
And here in Yamhill County, looking forward to it. Steve Pierce, Northwest Weather Consultants, thank you for visiting with us on AM 1260 KLYC.